Dynasty Warriors 3 has been one of my favorite games of all time for a while now. And I've invested hundreds if not thousands of hours into this game. Not only playing it, but searching on YouTube for various content, whether it be 5th weapon runs, or just playthroughs of the game, or just item runs of any kind, limit break, etc., you name it. And I've even seen some rank videos as well. When people do rank videos, I see either weapon tiers or character tiers, but the one thing I've never noticed is any ranking of the items themselves. Which items really are the best to use for your character, and which just shouldn't be in the game at all. That's something I never really thought about until now. And I decided to take all 24 rare red items and rank them from worst to best. The only exception with this list is the Bodyguard healing scroll is not going to be on this list, even though it is classified as a rare item. It is for the bodyguards and it's its own separate thing. I'm only going to focus on the 24 rare red items that are going to be in Extreme Legends. And without further ado, this is my ranking of the Dynasty Warriors 3 rare items from worst to best. Be honest, you forgot that this item existed, didn't you? Well, don't worry, you'll forget again once this video's over. Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking with this one. This item is just baffling to me. Now, what the Master's Cloak does is it automatically does the mid-air evade. You know, when you push the L1 button when you get knocked into the air and your character flips and lands back on his feet. However, as I said there, you can push L1 to do that. You don't necessarily need the Master's Cloak to perform this move. So, unless your L1 button is broken or you just somehow can't get the incredibly easy timing down, there's really no use for this item. Yeah, I don't know why this thing exists. Not only does it serve no purpose because you could hit a button to get the same effect, but it also takes up an item slot which could be used for something else. And on top of that, this item makes it absolutely impossible to activate the Scroll Accuracy, Survival Guide, and Defender if you wish to use those items, making it actually more of a hindrance to those 3 items in particular. So, yeah, I think everyone will most likely pass on this one. Yeah, this is one of those items that is a great idea in terms of quality of life, but it should not have been an item. And Kiyomi must have thought this was silly too, because in later entries, you could see your horse on the map from default. You don't need an item to do it. So the Beast Harness, as you can see here, adds a little star on the map, and you can see the position of the last horse you rode, whether it's one that you equipped yourself, or one that you just randomly pick up. And again, it's a nice quality of life, like so you know where your horse is. But is it worth sacrificing an item slot over? Absolutely not. So it's just on the bottom of the barrel. The only reason why it's not dead last is because at least it gives you something that you can't get otherwise, unlike the Master's Cloak. This is one of those items that are way too situational to be any good. Which is unfortunate, because being able to have 20 seconds of full Musou instead of just 10 is actually a really good concept. But the only problem is not only do you need to, again, sacrifice an item slot, but you need to be in the position to use it by finding one of the Imperial Seals on the map. So on larger maps, you got 4 locations, and most of them are out of the way, and you probably won't use them regardless. Or on smaller maps, there's 1, maybe 2. So your options are very limited on how to trigger this item. The only way this item would be any better is if troops or someone else drops the Imperial Seal, but considering you can only get it in boxes, there's really no use for it. Yeah, this item kind of just sucks. Every time I use this item, I think that it's going to be kind of beneficial, because, oh, alright, you can at least do some damage to guarding enemies no matter what you're doing damage when you have the Battle Axe equipped. However, damage is so small, it's like chip damage. I mean, even the Blast Orb in Dynasty Warriors 4 does more damage. So, this thing is just, no, not really beneficial at all to really use on an item slot, and the only reason why it's not on the bare bottom is because it kind of has a tiny bit more use than the other 3. That's really about it. I'll be honest with you, I thought this item was broken when I first tried to use it. I really was baffled as to what this darn thing even did. And I finally figured it out. In order to trigger the lightning effect with the bow, you have to make sure that the enemy you're hitting, when they're inflicted by the lightning, falls enough distance to trigger the shock effect, which is very situational and hard to trigger. The best way I've seen to use it is to shoot it from tower archers. When they fall off, they'll hit the ground and get a little extra damage in. Or the only way to do that with officers is if you stun them with the arrow, then either shoot another arrow at them to trigger it, or run up and hit them to knock them down to trigger the lightning element. It is very hard to pull off, and the damage output is not worth it in the slightest. It's just like a very poor man's lightning element, but many characters that have the lightning element with their weapons, they just do the job much better. Compared to the other arrow item in this game, yeah, you can skip this one too. The Bodyguard manual. This is one that I was really stumped as to, like, what it did exactly, and I figured out that this item's actually worse in XL. In the vanilla Dynasty Warriors 3, not only do the bodyguards become more aggressive, but I think their weapons also get upgraded and they earn an extra attack while using them. Considering that Dynasty Warriors 3 XL gave you the options for items for the bodyguards and the additional weapons, besides the additional aggressiveness, the Bodyguard manual really doesn't do much. So if you have XL, you can completely skip out on this one. If you have Vanilla, I can see this being a little bit more useful, where the Bodyguards actually do get a little bit of a buff. Again, with the aggressiveness and a little bit of a stat upgrade. But the stat upgrades and stuff is not worth using the Bodyguard manual at all if you have XL, because you have both weapons and items to use with them to take place of that. Yeah, this one is another one of those items I had a really difficult time trying to figure out where to put on this list. It does have its uses, early game, but not only are there other options that could just make this completely obsolete, being the 2 other horses you get in the game, but if you have enough officer points, you could just ride any horse anyway. So really, this item has a very limited use, maybe in the early game, if you have no other options. If you somehow unlock this item before you unlock Hex Marks or Red Hair, I can see this being good for a fresh character, maybe, if you want to just grab a horse and take off, without having to use the slowest one that the common troops have. But, if you're like me and you have all characters maxed, you will never touch this item ever again. That's a shame. I'm going to be honest with you, this is the first time I've ever used this item. This one is fun in concept, but, like, it really doesn't do much. Maybe it is fun just to run everybody over, including officers and even your own bodyguards, because your bodyguards won't slow you down either, which is a little bit of a benefit, but again, not really worth an item slot over. So this one is just more of those, like, fool around and have fun kind of items. I don't really see this thing being usable on higher difficulties at all. I wouldn't even use it on hard, to be honest, because it doesn't really do much damage running people over. Like, the only benefit I can see this item having is if you want to get to point A to point B to fill out a certain objective as quickly as you possibly can without any troops slowing you down. But again, the uses of that is extremely situational, so this is one of those items you could also skip on. This item literally prevents you from getting stunned, so no more officers or guard captains trying to use the move to stun you, and no more charge arrows stunning you either. This is a very situational item as well, and it is great to not being able to get stunned whatsoever. However, again, 5 items, very limited slots. Maybe if you have like an extra item to spare, this would be a decent one to put down if you find yourself getting stunned a lot. The one that benefits the most is Taishasa with this 5th weapon. Honestly, with that Divine Helm attached to that, and you can add other items to it, I find that to be great, but that technically doesn't count because that's part of the weapon and not the item itself. In terms of the item itself, again, it does have its uses. However, you have to, again, think, do I want to sacrifice an item slot for this? The Buckler suffers from the same exact situational benefits as the Divine Helm. It does have its uses, but again, is it worth using the item slot on? Now, with the Buckler, you don't stumble while guarding. So you don't have to worry about officers using their C1 to break your guard, or if your defense is too low and you block too many times, that will also break your guard. But now the question is, can this be used to block Ganning's Musou attack? Oh wow, it actually does. Alright, well that hack is of some use. Okay, never mind. Don't ever use it against him either. Moving on. 7 Stars Blade also has its uses. Again, kind of being situational. The only reason why you want to get combos is because you want to either earn the Musou armor item, which takes a certain number of combo points in total to obtain, or you're trying to go for limit break items. Now, this item is very handy to keep the combo string going for a little while longer so you can rack up those perfect combos and try to get those limit break items. However, when you have the combo timing down and you find your perfect character, it is not necessary at that point onward. So this is a great item to like practice getting perfect combos on until you get the feel for it, but then once you do, it's not necessary to keep on. Then other than that, if you're just playing stages normally, this item really doesn't have a lot of use, so you could replace it with something else. I just realized I put the Hexmarks harness at number 13. I swear that wasn't intentional. Anyway, now I know what a lot of people are thinking of me putting the Hexmark saddle at number 13 because it is a horse and it is very beneficial. However, I do have a couple of reasons why it's this far down. Not only is the Hexmark saddle inferior to the Red Hair saddle in terms of speed, but it's also more difficult to obtain in my opinion. Most players, I believe, would get the Red Hair saddle before this one. So not only is this horse slower, but it also is probably the saddle you will get after the better one. So its uses, I would say, are very, very limited unless you just so happen to get this one before defeating Lu Bu and getting his horse. Now I did also check to see if this item does give you a luck boost, and by playing through multiple times on very hard with and without it, I did not really see a substantial difference with this horse. So I do not think the luck element was implemented in this version of the game. I think that started with Dynasty Warriors 4. Or maybe I just got unlucky. So, but either way, most players would pick the other horse. Fire arrows are a very interesting item. Again, they're kind of situational in terms of certain things, but they do have their uses more than other items do. The most perfect example is fighting Lu Bu when you're a lower character. You know, you can't flinch him. It stinks, doesn't it? Well, one of the benefits of the fire arrows is, well, arrows in general, when used as a charge attack, will stun Lu Bu. So not only will he burn and lose health, but this is one of the few times that you can attack him and keep him airborne with either a combo string or a Musou attack. And by doing so, he'll take a significant amount of damage over time, which is way better than just trying to spam true Musou attacks and risk him countering or him attacking you when your attack is done. Lu Bu isn't the only officer you can do this to. You can really do it to anyone you want to burn and get a quick combo in. But on enemies that can be flinched, I don't recommend it. It's mainly for the ones that you cannot flinch. Now, I know a lot of you might disagree with me on the gold harness being this high on the list, when I know most of you will probably say that the Musou armor is basically this but better. And you're not wrong, it totally is. However, one thing to consider is that the Musou armor is not available in the vanilla version of the game. And so I have to judge it by the vanilla and the XL to get the proper ranking out of this one. On stages where you want to get to point A to point B on a horse and you don't want the archers to constantly knock you off, it does have its uses. When you're playing the vanilla Dynasty Warriors 3, this item really does help. However, like I mentioned previously, once you unlock the Musou armor, this thing could come in Dynasty Warriors 3 XL, this thing becomes completely obsolete, and you will honestly never use it again. Now, as a side note, I realized that you're not fully immune to arrows until you're fully mounted on the horse with this item, and that doesn't happen with the Musou armor, so yeah, I guess that's another flaw that this item has. If you're getting up on the horse, you can still get knocked off by an arrow. You have to be fully sitting on the horse for it to work. Alright, well, good to know, I guess. Never being able to lose weapon deadlocks. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean you win them all, so the worst you could do is tie. This does have its benefits on harder difficulties to an extent, because nobody likes to clash, especially on very hard, and then all of a sudden inevitably lose because you can't button mash like the AI can. But on lower difficulties, you could easily win clashes if you push the button just casually. I've tested it out before. We're like hard on later stages and then very hard all throughout are really the only times that this item would really benefit you. But the thing you have to factor in as well is that you will still tie, so you'll still stumble, and other enemies and officers can still attack you while you're stumbling. It doesn't matter if the one you clash with does it too. So this is another situational item that I can find having way more benefits depending on the situation, but not exactly the most reliable, unfortunately. The Art of War is an interesting item, I'll admit, where you're able to get extended benefits from using the War Guard's axe, the battle armor, and the Imperial Seal. Extending it by 50%, so I guess it would be 45 seconds for the first two, and then 15 seconds for the Imperial Seal. On a stage where you know that battle axes and battle armor are common drops, this item really does come in handy, and you won't believe how beneficial it is for those extra 15 seconds of ×2 attack. It really does feel a lot longer than it is. But did you know that you could combine this item with other items to increase their benefit too? Using this item with the Scroll of Accuracy, Survival Guide, and Defender will increase their benefits as well, extending the timer for them. Especially if you're someone who loves rocking red health with the Survival Guide, having 45 seconds instead of 30 is actually quite good. And in case you're wondering, yes, this thing does stack with the Seal of Darkness. Have fun. Music to my ears. The legendary scroll, for a while, I swear nobody knew what this thing did. But, in all reality, this is the Master Musou from Dynasty Warriors 4. Your Musou attack will break enemies' guards so you can hit them no matter what, and also while depleting your Musou gauge twice as fast. The description does not tell you this, it just says guarding enemies will take damage from your Musou attack. That is kind of vague, don't you think? You should have mentioned that it will automatically break their guard. That's really beneficial. So you could basically counter with a Musou attack anytime you want, as long as they don't use theirs. I personally don't use it just because I'm used to just waiting for them to attack first and then counter. But if you're like a go hack and slash kind of player, this item is super beneficial, so you don't have to worry about anyone blocking your Musous ever again. I know that at least 5 of you watching this will go try this out with Gending. I've heard countless from many people saying that the Defender is a very useless item. However, I'm going to inform you as to why I think that isn't the case. It does have its benefits. Now, I don't know if you know this, but when you're red health in Dynasty Warriors 3, your character gets a slight defense boost. You will take slightly less damage at red health. Now, the reason why the Defender is a good choice, especially in a pinch, is along with the defense boost when you're red health, you get an additional ×2 defense when you get knocked down. Now, I understand that the Defender on its own isn't exactly the best, and it's best paired with its partner, the Survival Guide, but it definitely does have its uses in certain situations, more so than other items. I will admit, while doing some of my runs, this thing has saved me multiple times, where I get up and have that ×2 defense, and archers did snipe me. It would have defeated me, but with this, it actually saved me. So I try to use the Defender with certain characters as much as I possibly can. Jiang Wei equipping it with his 5th weapon is a prime example of that. But hey, even on its own, I still try to use it whenever I can see fit. This item rocks. There's no denying that. How many times have giant packs of archers stunned you when you're trying to get away, either on your horse or just on foot? Yeah, it sucks, doesn't it? But luckily, no archer will ever interrupt your attacks ever again with this, and it really is a blessing. Now, the only flaw I found with the Musou armor is it doesn't have bow defense, so you have to rely on the shell armor as well if you want to take full advantage of this and not get completely wrecked by the archers. But not only that, because you don't flinch, sometimes more arrows are bound to hit you, and you technically could in certain situations rack up more damage that you otherwise wouldn't. However, the pros outweigh the cons by far. not being able to get stunned, so especially if you equip that with either like Musou or someone else that you want to trigger like a certain death element or something and not get stunned by arrows, it's perfect. Okay, I'll admit I have a little bit of a bias with this item, but that's because I love the fact of getting ×2 attack. I like to play a little bit on the risky side, I will admit, and I love being able to trigger ×2 attack for 30 seconds for as much as I can. And paired this thing up with the defender, whether it's on character's 5th weapons or just the item itself, you'll be amazed how quickly you tear through some of the later stages, as long as you play defensively and know when to use your Musou and know when to counter and get out of the way. But once you get that down, the damage you rack up at low health is super beneficial. Again, maybe the only downside is trying to get knocked down to trigger it, but you could easily either get on a horse, get knocked off, or do a simple jump while someone's attacking you to get knocked down. Once you get the knack of it, it's basically like getting infinite ×2 attack. And for an added bonus, if you see a health nearby, you could trigger the survival guide and then go grab the health, and you still got ×2 attack for 30 seconds. Now this item I don't recommend on lower difficulties because battle axes are more common, but on later difficulties when they rarely ever appear, this just having the ability to trigger ×2 attack, theoretically whenever you want, is really beneficial. Okay, I have a confession with this item. I don't really use it. At all. Okay, that's just me being stubborn and not wanting to use something that's easy to use on very hard difficulty. However, I am definitely aware of the power that this item truly has. And for a lot of people playing on very hard, they will pick this item for said power. If you combine this item with the elixir, all you have to do mainly to counter officers is wait for them to attack you, use your Musou, and you're guaranteed to get fire damage in there. The true Musou attack will keep them airborne and ablaze, so they cannot counter you. Except for Sunjan's Musou for some reason. Now the only reason why I personally do not use this item is because there are certain characters that benefit way more without it. Enemies take more damage while they're on the ground standing. So any character that has a Musou attack that does not keep the enemy airborne regardless, like Shu Huang, Gan Ning, and Zhang Liao for example, they actually will have a huge damage reduction by using the Way of Musou. Safe to say that the Way of Musou definitely has its uses, and it's an item that everyone can agree does benefit on the harder difficulties without a doubt. I already know what you're thinking. Why did you pick this as number 3? Oh, I'll tell you why. You don't know the secret to this item, do you? The marching drum, according to the description, helps boost your allies' morale, especially the one with, that's under your unit. However, it has a secret second benefit that's not even in the description. And on very hard difficulty, especially on certain stages, it has saved me a bundle of time and frustration. The marching drum's second benefit is that, while equipped, you can lower enemies' morale twice as fast. Ordinarily on very hard, in order to decrease an enemy unit's morale by 1 star, you have to defeat approximately 50 troops per 1 star. However, with this knocks it down to only 25 troops per star. Now this doesn't seem like a big deal, but on certain stages when you're playing on later difficulties, it can be an absolute lifesaver. Prime examples of this is trying to go for Lu Meng or Sun Jian's 5th weapon on Hefei Castle. You want to lower Sima Yi's morale as quickly as you possibly can, and using this item does that wonderfully. Once you lower it down to a certain amount, your troops can handle the rest and infiltrate the castle on their own, while you focus on the reinforcement and other things. And not only that, this item has also helped me with Chang Ban trying to prevent Liu Bei from escaping, and also on any of Zhang Zhao's Musou mode with the peasants, because you want to lower the morale of the troops they're currently fighting, because off-screen they'll die very quickly. I will admit that this item is technically situational, but on very hard difficulties, it makes certain stages that were otherwise impossible to defeat all officers in actually possible. This item literally changes the meta around by a long shot. Ah, come on, you knew this item was making the top 3. This item has got to be one of the most used items in the game. next to like maybe the Tiger Amulet or something. But in terms of the rare items, it is definitely one of the most used items in the game. Who doesn't want a fast horse to traverse the entire map? Especially like Wuzhang Plains, you know how big that map is. So yeah, you want to have a horse that gets you to point A to point B as fast as you possibly can. Granted, it's not as fast as later entries, but it still technically is the fastest horse in the game. Maybe I wouldn't personally use this on later difficulties just because I don't want to sacrifice an item slot for a horse at all. But on fresh playthroughs, when you're building characters up and you don't even have like the officer points to take a horse yet, you have your own. You don't need to worry about that. You can beat stages significantly faster with this item too. You'll be amazed how much time you'll save from using this horse instead of walking. Need I say more? It's the red hair. It's great. Did you figure out what the #1 item is yet? Okay, I will admit this is an extremely biased pick. However, I have used this item more than every other rare item in the game, bar none, ever since I discovered its true capability. Now, with the scroll of accuracy, when you get knocked down and get back up, you get 10 seconds of ×2 attack, at the cost of having your defense. So this is definitely a risk-reward item for sure. However, once you master how to use it, when to trigger it, and the damage you stack up on later difficulties is substantial. 10 seconds may not seem like a lot, but one of the things I love to do with this item is get up and use a Musou attack and just use most of the scroll of accuracy's effect on that alone. Not only are you getting ×2 attack with your Musou attack, but you're also invincible, negating the repercussions of the half defense for as long as you can as well. This item definitely does have its risks, and I will admit I have died with it a couple of times accidentally. However, more often than not, you can trigger when to use this item. You can trigger if you don't want to activate it because you're low health, use the mid-air evade, and you don't have to. I'll admit I was terrified in the very beginning when I first tried this item with the half defense, but once I got comfortable with it, it is an absolute blessing to get as much ×2 damage as you possibly can, especially with battle axes not being very common at all on harder difficulties. If this is an item you have not tried yet, I strongly suggest you at least give it a go and see if you can handle it, because honestly, once you master it, you will tear through even the hardest enemies on Hefei Castle and Wuzhang Plains like butter, and it is so satisfying. And with that, that was my ranked list of Dynasty Warriors rare items from worst to best. I know some of these will be quite controversial, and some of you might be thinking, oh no, I think this one should have been. You're crazy for putting that up there. But hey, my list might be different than yours, and I'll be more than happy to hear your top 5 best and worst down below. So why not? Leave a comment. Hey, leave a like as well. I enjoyed making this list. I'll admit, for the top and bottom it was easy. The middle ones was quite difficult for me to rank. And some of these items, again, I never used before. Never really thought about it, but now I understand how they all function more or less, and yeah, it was really fun doing that. So if you want to see me do more, again, just leave a comment, leave a like. I was thinking about doing other Dynasty Warriors like ranked type of stuff like this, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.